welcome, everybody. So glad you're able to join us today on this little webinar we like to call Virtual Brunch with Actual Nerds. My name is Leighton Rasco. I'm from Attendee Management. I'm a nerd, and I'll be moderating our discussion today. And I would like to be the first to welcome everyone to your new life, because after today, you will feel empowered to cast off the shackles of oppression binding you to poorly produced meetings and enter the world of expertly executed virtual events. Our guest nerd today, Brandt Krueger, will lead us to virtual event enlightenment. But first, housekeeping notes. So, please change your Zoom name to reflect your full name as well as your organization. If you have misplaced or not assigned a name of birth, please raise your hand and someone will assist you shortly. This is an Ask Brandt Anything style webinar. Your questions and participation are encouraged. We will be checking the chat for questions, as well as looking for virtual and physical hand raises. Or just speak right out like you're a presidential candidate during a debate, and it's the other candidate's turn. This is an open discussion, so I think I already did that slide. Sorry. We've been recording these things, and we've been putting them up on attendingnet.com/archive. We've also started to take some key moments from our discussions and edit them down to some more digestible 5-minute or so little snippets, and we're going to put those out on social media and on our website as well. So keep a look on your favorite social media channels, as long as they're Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. I mean, you can look for them on TikTok, but we're probably not going to do that. So stick to those other ones. And now let's welcome our very special guest. He is a technical producer, an educator, a speaker, and a consultant for the meetings and event industry. Brandt Krueger. Hey, Brandt.
Oh, hey, that's me.
How are you doing today?
I am doing all right. That was quite the opening sequence you had there. I was not expecting that I would be responsible for quite so much heavy lifting. Enlightenment is a heavy request. I mean, that's a lot.
I was just feeling the power of the moment.
I guess. And if you want me to interrupt you every 2 seconds, I'm more than happy to do so.
It is.
No, please do.
Wrong.
It is Leighton's birthday today. It's Leighton's birthday today. It is Leighton's birthday today, and I think he's jacked up on caffeine.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and amongst the nerds, it's a moniker I definitely embrace and endorse. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm heavily caffeinated as well. So that we should be able to probably answer 4,500 questions in the next hour.
All right. Well, let's just jump right into our first one. Lisa Romero actually asked 2, so that's pretty awesome. The first one she asked is, are there templates that can be shared for the new virtual event pivot that we've all had to make suddenly? I'm especially interested in a timeline or task template specific to virtual events. So,
we've got there's so in the live classes that I teach and in a lot of the sessions that I do, we have kind of a running drinking game that every time Brandt says go back to the goals and objectives of your organization and your event, every time Brandt says it depends, and third or fourth depending on the day. So, but those are definitely the big 2. And so anytime we get into things like, is there a template for this? Is there a model for this? I really get the screaming goosebumps, because it's like saying, how much does an event cost in Florida in August? You can't answer that question, right? Because every event is different. Every event that you do has a completely different timeline, depending on the number of people at the event, the number of speakers, the number of presenters. How complicated is it? Is there pre-recorded video? Is it all live? So the short answer to the question is no. there isn't a good template for that, because there isn't a good template for events. You can kind of go through the check boxes of what you need to do for your event, and lay out your own timelines based on the goals and objectives of your event and what you need to get done. Those timelines are also going to be very specific to the vendor. So, if you've got if your online event platform is an On24 versus an Intrado versus a Meeting Play versus any of the 200 newcomers that have come along in the last 6 months, those timelines are going to be very different. And the incumbents, kind of those big original ones that I mentioned off the top there, they might have longer lead times because they're so busy than some of the more upstart newcomers that have more recently pivoted their production. So it really is, there's no good template for this, because one, every event is different, and two, all of the vendors are going to be different. So it's really important to have good communication between your platform and yourself, between your AV production people that you might be bringing in to help produce the event, to make sure that you're hitting those marks. Just like you would for your in-person event. And I think one of the things that I really want to emphasize is that just because we're moving to the online world does not mean that those timelines go out the window, does not mean that your 20 years of experience producing live in-person events goes out the window. You still have to have rehearsals. You still have to have speaker management. You still have to make sure that you're getting your presentations done in time so that you can get them put together and that you can test them and that they look good. All of these things that we did with our in-person events, we still need to do with our online events. And so, you need to factor all of those things into your timelines just like you did before. So, really long answer to a really short question.
Well, thanks. I'm going to actually kind of rephrase that question real quick and ask if I'm used to planning in-person events, and all of a sudden I'm having to plan a virtual event, what are just some of the key questions I need to be asking?
That's a loaded
It depends.
question. Yeah, it depends.
Well, they're all loaded questions at this point.
We really should have this at about 4 o'clock on a Friday, because then we can all be the key questions are, the metaphor that I like to use is that the online platform is the venue, right? And so that's a really key way of thinking about it. That it's not the same as your registration platform. It's not the same as any event management software you might be using. It's not the same as choosing an event app. This is your venue, and so you need to think about the experience from start to finish. What does it look like from registration? What does it look like, in the email communications leading up to it? Is it email communications? What's our social media look like moving up to the event? And then we get to the event, and then we get to the venue, right? So what is that experience like? What is the onboarding experience? What is it like for an attendee who, even though we've been living in this 6 months, maybe hasn't still attended an in-person or an online conference? So I tend to go back to the goals and objectives of what you're trying to do. So many of the fails that we've seen happen so far is losing sight of what is this event about. And, I kind of go back to this example of a fundraising event that I went to really early on in the pandemic, right? Everyone's scrambling at that point. You got to give them a lot of leeway, but at the same time, it's a really good example of what not to do. And the fundraising event, they went through all the check boxes, right? So all right, well, we usually have a local celebrity come and moderate it. We usually have, a presentation from the nature preserve that it was for, come and do a presentation. We usually have an auction. So they kind of checked off all those boxes. So we had a pre-recorded thing from a local weatherman. We had a pre-recorded thing from the nature preserve guy with the birds, and he actually fed a bird to another bird. It was not pretty. They usually have a meal, so they actually contracted with a local restaurant to go and pick up, heat and eat meals from the things. But they lost sight of what the goals and objectives are, not only for the organization, but for the attendees. So I was really looking forward to this fundraiser before all of this came down, because it's kind of a hobnobby networking event, right? It's all the who's who of my little suburb. It's the mayor. It's all the players from the chamber. And so I'm finally going to get to go this year. Sweet. Because I was always out of town or something like that. And so, there was absolutely no networking. So that's like half of what I would have wanted to go for the event. There was, the food was meh. It was, kind of subpar, and because it's, it was a restaurant that wasn't used to doing catering, so they, boxed it up and kept it in a refrigerator pack for people to pick up any time during the day. The silent auction wasn't mentioned over the entire course of the event. They went live with it, a couple hours earlier, but literally never even mentioned it the whole time. So they had checked off all the boxes, but they'd forgotten what the goals and what the goals and objectives of the event were. So that's where I kind of keep running back to is keeping that, maintaining, following that audience experience all the way through. And then, so back to the question of, what are the key questions to ask? Are we holding true to those goals and objectives? Are we holding true to the goals and objectives of all of the stakeholders? And that includes your internal stakeholders, your sponsors, your exhibitors, and your attendees. Are they getting what they need to be getting out of the event? I really am caffeinated, aren't I? Jeez, that was like a half an hour on
great.
one question. I better start getting shorter.
Well, it was a two-part question, so get ready for the second part. She also asked, what are some salient tips for selecting a comprehensive end-to-end event management solution? I mean, I feel like that's just as loaded, but
it is. I can try and do that one a little bit shorter. The true fact of the matter is that whether you're going with an incumbent, and by incumbents I mean the ones who were around more than 6 months ago, which remind me later, I've got a good tip on that. Versus the people that have just come around. The 90%, actually, it's very similar to event apps. Like you think about your event apps, right, where you're going in. 90% of what I got my agenda, I got a map maybe of the facility, I've got maybe a networking option, I've got a way to share contact. Like 90% of that functionality is the same amongst the 200 event apps that are out there. Same's kind of the thing with the event platforms. 90% of it's the same, right? We got video, we got boxes, we got Brady Bunch, we got we got a way to chat. Maybe we've got a Q&A, and then maybe there's some additional vendor fair functionality. Maybe they integrate registration into the product itself. But very much that 90%, that 80-90% down the middle is going to be the same from platform to platform. So the key so get your drinks right is going back to your goals and objectives of what makes us different, like what's our thing. So for example, some of the event apps that are out there grew up coming out of like the medical meetings and scientific meetings. As a result, they're maybe better at doing like scientific posters, digital scientific posters or something along those lines, or delivering content. So that's their 10% that's different. Same thing with all these other platforms, right? So a lot of the newcomers were event apps or registration platforms. They had a specialty before they pivoted to this. So what was that 10% difference? So that's what I would try and key in on is what's different about your platform than the other ones, and try and line that up with what's special and different about your event. That's kind of the trick. Real quick though, I mean, part of the problem though is that people are swamped. so the online platforms are swamped. So it might be catch as can be, especially if you're trying to do it in a hurry, which unfortunately a lot of people thought we would be done with this by September. So come August, they suddenly had to pivot on and try and go online. I think similarly we're seeing another wave here of people realizing, not a wave related to the virus, but a wave related to people, oh, you know what, I don't think this is going to be done by November. And so we're hitting another push here to try and move events that were scheduled to be in person in November. So try and find the platform that's going to be that different 10%, but at the same time, you might be limited to who you can even get to do your event depending on how far out you are at this point.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, I was going to ask you how to weed out that 10%. When you look at a demo, I've been on a million software demos and they're all great. Every single one of them does everything that they say they can do and more. But then you get it and it's not quite there. So, I mean, how do you find that 10% that's different?
You have to push. You have to push a little bit, and honestly, it's a very similar feel these days to when I was trying to help clients find their event app, right? Because if you go to a program like IMEX or something like that, and you hit that back corner where all the technology companies are, and that you say, okay, so I get you do all of this, but if you had to pick a core market, like what would your core market be? What do you specialize in? No, we're good for everybody. Yeah, I get that, but if you kind of got to push a little bit to try and find what the differentiators are. And I was helping a client. They were actually trying to line a lot of this stuff up in a spreadsheet, and every time they would run into a new feature, they would add a new line, and then but what you would wind up with is no, 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 yes, no, 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 and then you would realize, okay, that's their one feature that nobody else has. So I said, rather than trying to just adding these new lines, add a single line that says differentiator, or something along those lines, and then you can find, okay, this is something that's different about this platform. They have integrated networking. They have better engagement opportunities. So instead of just chat, they have the ability to do Q&A with upvoting, and finding those features that then line up with the priorities of your event. So if your event, using my example, they had no networking as part of that fundraiser. And so, that was a key thing for the attendees that was missed. So that would then rank higher in what I'm looking for in a platform for that particular event.
Love that you make that like differentiation between like where they came from, because that's where I like, as more and more come and we do more and more demos and talk to more and more clients, that's what I'm really seeing is, you've got the group of virtual event platforms that came from the registration place. You've got ones that came from like production, so they've got this added level of being able to pull in the production piece. Well, that's important to some, but not, and the price tag. And I find myself going, like, kind of starting to break it into things, medical meetings. I saw a great one that I would never run across until I was talking to a client that, came from the medical source. I think I don't think that's what, what planners, when they're going to look at different ones, nobody's pointing that out, that's the end. They came from somewhere, and kind of think about where they came from. So I just think that's such an excellent point to make.
And if you see that feature list and there's a feature on there and you don't know what it is, chances are you don't need it. You know what I mean? If you don't know now ask the question, definitely, like, so what is that? Don't just let it lie. But chances are, if there's a feature on there that you don't know, like scientific posters, that was not a world that I lived in. I came up in the financial and medical event world. So this idea of scientific posters was not something I ever had to deal with. And it's a big deal if you're in that community, if those are the types of events that you do. And so, so if I saw that on a feature list 5 years ago, well, maybe longer, I wouldn't know what that is. And so, that's how I discovered what it was running into that as part of a platform. So if you need a good registration platform for your online event, you might want to look at one of those companies that was a registration company. If engagement is your thing, look at one of those companies that was primarily an engagement operator, and has since added the video chat and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we just had a demo the other day, and like to that point, to Christina's, it was, our platform was designed by meeting planners for meeting planners. So, that's a perspective. So like if you're an events manager, if you're a manager of meetings and events, all that thinking went into the technology, and then they had to assemble the technologists to actually do it. Well, that may or may not be the ideal. And like Christina said, if you need, high-end production, you may be going to a Freeman or somebody who built their platform around their production skills. So, look at what you really need, and ask the question about, what's in your DNA, when you created this platform.
Yeah, it's a great point, Jeff. It's a great point.
So going back to engagement, are there any platforms, and you don't have to like recommend a platform specifically, but are there any things that you've seen people do that are different? Because I feel like that's the main gap between an in-person and a virtual event.
Scene that's different, different
Scene
from
that's different, or just that really works, or it works okay-ish, because we know that it's never gonna be right.
Well, what popped into my mind is you said, this idea of, and it's something that I've struggled with in my career as well, this idea that everything looks great in a demo. I've often said that we need to be able to experiment more in the events industry, that because we live in a world that is so one shot at it, you get one shot, and if you mess it up, you're host. And so because we live in that world, I think it makes us risk averse to try new things. And so I've really felt for a long time that we need a space where we can try new things, where we can experiment. So what I'm kind of recommending, if you're in the type of organization that has like 2 big events and then a bunch of little events, spread the wealth out a little bit in those little events, so that you can try a few different providers and start to key in on what you like. And then, they can graduate to the big, to the big event at some point. I think that's how you're going to find those differentiators of like, oh, I like how they did that. Oh, I don't like how they did that. Because this stuff is moving so fast and features are being rolled out so quickly that you never know what the next differentiator is going to be. You never know what the next cool thing is going to be. And on those same lines, I'm recommending folks don't get locked into multi-year contracts at this point. You should not do that. It made more sense with things like venues where upgrades are slow, those kinds of things. But that's where that metaphor breaks down, is that, this stuff is moving so fast that you need to keep an eye on trying new things. So where I was going with that is that one of the companies that I know is they haven't released their product yet. They've been working on it for 6 months at this point. They didn't just rush it to market. They're still working on it. They're actually paying people to come in, 50, 60 people at a time, to test. Which is something that I haven't heard from a lot of other companies. So being able to test things at scale without it being live for a customer, I think is a huge, huge thing that we need to be working on as an industry is this, because it looks great in a demo, but what happens when you throw 11,000 people at it? Will it stand up? Something really long got dropped into the chat.
They have a hashtag parking lot party. This is what happens when you bring 11,000 people into a platform that can't handle it.
True that. It brings up a great point. I know exactly what event you're talking about, and without naming names or calling out a school, here's what I'll say, though, is that I talked to that platform a week later, and I am going to be more comfortable with a platform that has had an epic fail and knows what went wrong and fixed it than I will with a platform that's just been kind of skating along and you're that first one to come in at 11,000.
It's been tested. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I don't know if you went to the next one, but the next one went off without a hitch. So
Fix things.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I was on a plane a week after 9/11 and people were like, "Are you crazy?" I'm like, "Are you kidding? This is the safest time to fly because everyone's on high alert right now. Nothing's gonna happen right now, and I think there's something to be said for having a very public epic fail that is going to motivate you to make sure that never happens again.
Right, before we move on to the question that Lisa put in the chat, but on this note, any tips on how to get that out of someone you're demoing with? Like, hey, how many epic fails have you had? It's kind of a weird way to phrase it. Like, any
it's a
idea
great point. I specifically thinking about that conversation, I said, okay, it looks like you topped out about here. How did you deal with that? Where do you think your new level is? And that you're confident you'd be able to handle. And I said, just be honest, because I don't want to, I want to know. And I've kind of started to include that in conversations of, hey, I know these guys had a thing. Yeah. So if you had to guess, where do you think your top out is? Like, how big of an event have you handled successfully? Is maybe a kinder way of asking that, because I think then you can start to get at again those differentiators and know, just be honest with me. How big have you tried successfully pulled off?
Is it, do you think it's mostly that, like size, bandwidth, that is the major hurdle for these companies once?
It is sometimes. If you're properly kind of set up from the beginning, what happens is, they just spool up more Amazon servers somewhere. Once you reach a limit, these things are supposed to be kind of relatively scalable. But depends on your plan and where you're hosted and who's you're hosted with and all that kind of stuff as to how that all works on the back end. Actually, I think the larger problem with scale that I'm seeing happen in the industry is customer service. They're not able to keep up with the customer service demands of 11,000 people getting on all at once, that kind of thing. I think that's a larger problem in our industry, and it's one that frustrates me because with so many good audiovisual technicians and producers and generally techie people unemployed right now in the industry, I find it kind of inexcusable that we're struggling with filling customer service slots just because it's a little techie. First of all, people can be trained to go down a phone list of a customer support tree. You don't have to be super techie to be able to handle, did you try refreshing the web page? There's a certain level of, and then you go to, just like we do with software companies have different levels of support. Hire 50 people to handle level 1 support, and then 10 people to handle level 2 support. This isn't rocket science. We don't have to reinvent the wheel on this stuff. And so I do find it really frustrating when I hear software platforms turning people away because they're too busy. Or they're doing, ridiculously high pricing to artificially reduce the number of customers that they've got. When they could easily, again, spool up some more Amazon servers and hire some freaking people. I do find that a little, as you can tell, frustrating.
Oh, and I want the level of support in between level 1 and level 2 that hurries it up and escalates it.
Yeah.
To have to go back and forth with support 15 times before they go, oh, you know what? We're going to talk to the developers. I wish they'd speed that up.
I've been trying to glance at Lisa's question. If someone can kind of help me summarize that, so I don't just sit here and have dead air while I read it.
I'm sorry, Brett.
There's a lot going on there.
It's Lisa.
Yeah, Lisa, can you give me
I
an
sure
executive
will.
summary?
Okay, so basically we're struggling right now. We have an upcoming event taking place, and I can share we're using Hoova for this particular one. So great features. What we're struggling with is we're going to be using Zoom for some of the breakout sessions, but I think we're struggling with the ability of, I guess, the current version of Zoom that we have, where if you're hosting, I guess there are limiting roles in that the host and the co-host can share, but that might get lost in the breakout rooms, if that makes sense. I'm not even sure I'm explaining this right, Brent, just because it's so new to me. But basically, we're trying to determine which product, if you will, would be the best for delineating the host from the audience participation so that it's in separate roles and that the host maintains control over the audience participation capabilities without interrupting the ability of the presenters.
How many rooms simultaneous?
No more than 4.
Okay. I mean, the quick and dirty solution to that is rather than using the breakout functionality of Zoom, just have 4 different Zooms going.
Okay, that makes better sense.
That way you say, okay, you're the host of this one. Here's the link. You're the host of this one. Here's the link. You're the host of this one. Here's the link. And it might up the version of Zoom, the billing that you have, because those would have to be 4 individual members. Because I know each individual
meeting needs its own link, kind of. Yeah, each
yeah,
breakout.
and I as a Zoom person, I can't have 4 links simultaneously. So I think
Right.
so that would count as 4 members of your organization on your Zoom plan. So I don't remember off the top of my head how much that adds
Okay.
but that would be a really effective way, I think, of maintaining control over that. The breakout functionality in Zoom is for me is fantastic in the sense that it's quick and dirty. Of
Okay.
course, the drawback is it's quick and dirty.
Right.
So the ability to go, I have 500 people in here, automatically divide them, by the number of rooms and make it go is sweet. And the way that that works is better than pretty much any other platform that I can think of. It's where you get into, like you say, you start to lose some of that functionality, some of that control, because it's meant to be a side conversation, a sidebar, as opposed to a separate thing. So if it's only 4, that'd be the way that I'd say to do it. Is here's where we're going to go, and tell your audience, that way we can maintain control, we can, all that kind of stuff. So they're like, hey, why aren't we using the stupid breakout session,
Thanks,
functionality?
Yeah, I mean,
Brandt.
one thing I
Yeah.
was going to bring up when you said that is that, you're still having to distribute those 4 different links, and they're going to have to, if they're going to a main session and then to the breakout sessions, they're going to have to understand which link to click on at what time. So that's,
Yeah, and depending on the platform, that can be pretty easy because chances are you're going to my agenda page, and all right, here's that session. Click here for that session. That's that link, and it just spools you out. Depending on the level of, yeah, I mean that I think, like I said, I think you're at that point you're looking for a balance of quick
Right.
and dirty and ease versus
yeah, it's something that just needs
yeah.
to be communicated to the
Yep.
attendees before.
To kind of grab onto your venue analogy, Brandt, like I think of the breakout feature in Zoom, kind of like when you're in the ballroom and then go, okay, break out and talk for the next hour, and then versus like when you would have actually individual breakout rooms and people go to their breakout rooms. That's more what I think of, like when you said I would just have 4 different Zoom calls. That's kind of like mentally how I think through those and like when to use what.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know why
there's
this is the gesture for people going to a breakout room, but apparently it is.
It's universal.
Does that get it done for you there,
yeah.
Lisa?
Thanks,
Yeah,
Brent.
of
Yes, it
course.
does. It helps.
Hey,
Yeah.
let me ask one thing, Brent. I know with one of the platforms we worked, they do like a Zoom integration, but for those smaller meetings, like Lisa was asking about, they go to Twilio. But I don't know the host or co-host power in Twilio. I don't know if that's there or not.
Yeah, and if you're going down that road, it really doesn't matter what platform. So you could spool out to a Google Meet, you could spool out to a Teams,
Okay.
and so whatever your kind of in-house platform comfortability platform
It
is,
is.
that's what you can do. Cindy asked about virtual icebreakers that you've seen work for small to medium meetings. There's a platform that I've had my eyeballs on for a while called Mixtroz, Mixtroz. And Ashley is the owner CEO over there, and she does a great job. It was an in-person thing that you would use. You would embed it in your event app, and they've layered on video chat functionality now to do that. And she actually came by our class and did a demo for the class. And so what I like about it is the way that it works is basically as you're onboarding, as you're getting into the mix, it'll ask you 10 questions that's set by you, the planner, set by you, the organizer. So you say, here are the 10 questions, and then you can have it preset up to either put people in the same room based on having similar answers or on having different answers. So you can kind of weight the responses to that real quick survey and say, this is how I want you guys to get mixed up and mixed together. And so you can intentionally create spaces where, okay, we're all from the same sales region, or you can say, we disagree on the latest HR policy. And you can either mix it up, or you can get people talking that agree with the things or are from the same region. And so by layering on the video functionality, now you're broken into those breakout rooms based on those mixes, based on how you responded to that survey, and then you can have those conversations. And you can do that multiple times. Okay, this is round one. This is round two. I don't recall any other products that are kind of doing that kind of thing. The how do we break into breakout sessions seems to be kind of the onus is left on you, the organizer. Whereas this is kind of, they obviously work with you to set those and weight those things. So it's a little bit more automated of a process. So I've been, like I said, I've been having my eye on that. And I'm hearing good things as far as it went. And the demo that we saw or that we did went well. So, that's a good thing. So I like that. Otherwise, you kind of got to go back to the college days of, thinking of, goofball questions to ask folks as they're coming in. That's what I like to do, is just as that 5-minute window that we seem to have to give for online events where we have to wait until 5 after to start, use that time, while people are filling in, to just throw questions out into the chat, or where's everybody dialing in from today, or, let's get to know, you thinking of Zoom. Okay, everybody, here's what I want you to do. I want you to open up the participants panel, and we're going to do the wave. So everybody raise your hand. Okay, now everybody take your hand down. And that's teaching them the platform while you go. These days, almost everybody's been on Zoom at this point, but especially early on, we were doing a lot of that. But, if you're not using Zoom, maybe I'm on Zoom, 9 out of 6 hours of the day. But, folks might be more of a Teams house or a Meet house. And so, especially if you're using one of those other platforms, use that as an opportunity to use your icebreaker as an opportunity to get them to know the platform.
As long as you're talking about new things that you've seen, some guy named Jeff Roscoe asked, COVID pushes virtual meeting platforms into the stratosphere. As things settle and get a little closer to what we think is normal, what do you think will be the next technology the meeting industry will jump all over?
It's going to be hybrid. I mean, as we come back to in-person events, there's going to be a certain percentage of people that are like, you know what? Good riddance. I don't ever want to fly, no offense to Vegas, but I don't ever want to fly to Vegas again and wander around a trade show floor for 7 hours. I like to try and keep track of what I'm hearing about meetings and events from people outside of our industry. And early on in this lockdown, there were a lot of tech press that were saying, good riddance. I don't ever want to go to CES again. Good riddance. I don't ever want to, go get into a meeting and be sitting elbow to elbow with, 2,000 of my closest friends, to watch a 2-hour keynote about, whatever the latest product is. And so coming out of this, we are going to have to deal with the online audience. And so, yes, nobody denies that in-person events have a power. In-person events have a different, vibe to them. Online cannot replace the in-person events, but they're going to for a certain percentage of people, for a certain percentage of events. And so where we're going to come out of this is not necessarily new technology, but really seeing a refocus on the remote audience. Now that might start to include things like VR, being able to go to the concert without going to the concert for $50 instead of $300 for the ticket. And that starts to become more appealing, just like what we're seeing with on-demand movies, right? We've already done probably 3 or 4 of those in our house at this point, because we look at it going, hey, if we would have gone to the movie theater, it would have been the price of the tickets plus the popcorn plus all this plus this. We can't take a family of 4 to the movie theater for $30 that I'm paying to see Trolls 2, something along those lines. So that change is going to come with us as we move forward. So as things come off lockdown, absolutely, we're going to rebound. We're going to do air hugs and elbow bumps, and we're going to be happy to see each other in person. But there's still going to be a lot of people that stay home. And so, looking at the ability to attend remotely, we're going to be 10 years advanced of where we would have been at this point because of all of this. in this
that's
1 year.
that's kind of that's kind of what I was getting at, is like if we had known what was going to happen, we all would have bought Zoom stock.
Right.
And as it rolls through, are we all going to need to go out and buy VR equipment or augmented? I mean, what it seems like that makes the most sense is that how do I get as an attendee, as a remote attendee, how do I just improve that much more on the performance or just my participation in the event?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I think, and I'm sorry, I'm just suddenly distracted and realized somebody must have needed a light bulb because I've got a bunch of light bulb boxes behind me. These things have stuff in them behind me. They're not just pretty.
Oh, I just thought that was a background.
Yeah, right.
I was like, what is all? So yeah. I mean, I think it really is. It's going to push the ball forward in a way that is unexpected from 2 years ago, or from even a year ago. Well, that's the thing, is we've been doing online events for 10 years. We've been doing fully online and hybrid events for 10 years, but the ball moved like 2 yards in that time. I mean, it was spit and baling wire 10 years ago, and then about a little less than that, some of these incumbents started coming into existence, and now we've got 200 new players in the category. That is going to drive innovation more than anything, because instead of the 4 incumbents that were doing it for 10 years, we're going to have 204 pushing the ball forward.
And mergers and acquisitions like you've never seen.
Yeah.
Except during the tech bubble.
Well, and that's the other thing that's going to come out of this, is when we do come out of this, that's some of that's going to start dropping off again. We're going to start reducing. I had a friend who left the meetings and events industry to become a realtor right before the market bubble of whatever that was, 2008, when the real estate collapsed. And I saw her shortly thereafter, and I was like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm doing great," because it got rid of all the crappy realtors that were around. So all that was left was the cream of the crop. And so I think we're going to see something like that as well. Is that when we come out of this, you're going to see a lot of drop off in, or they'll just get rid of that functionality and go back to being what they were before. I'm pretty impressed with the folks that didn't feel the need to layer on video chat capabilities. And so, I'm keeping in touch with registration platforms that are like, yeah, we're a registration platform. We don't feel the need to add video chat. Zoom works great. We'll integrate with whoever you want us to integrate with. And they're just as busy as they were planning on being, so if not better. So, that's great to hear. And so I think you're going to see those that focused on what they were good at coming out of this also perhaps a little better than they were before.
Yeah, Brandt, this is Lisa. That's an interesting concept. And I guess I had a little paradigm shift during this whole switch from physical to virtual, because I also expected, well, in our organization, and I work for a government state agency, so, lots of review. We don't take, we have to do a lot of due diligence before we make a decision. So we've been looking at, an event management tool end to end kind of for our system. And I thought that's the way to go. Well, the decision has been made to go with one of the big powerhouses. But I found in doing my research and participating in various webinars that you don't necessarily need an event to a tool that's, end to end, so that if you have a system in place, a registration company who does that, and maybe we just need to include that feature, we can do that. And there are other things that we can do internally. So things like that, like what we're currently using WebEx, because it's what our organization has, but that has some limitations. We've learned how to hobble things along and kind of do this a la carte thing, which can work just as well as going into a contract with an end-to-end management system. And I found your remark earlier very interesting, because we're actually doing what you're suggesting we don't do. And we're entering into this 3-year contract, which one we've never worked with before, and it's going to be such a learning curve for us. And who's to say that that works for us or doesn't? And I don't know if there was an advantage to entering a 3-year contract now, or why we didn't consider a 1-year, but it's kind of where we are. So I think your comments are very, very interesting in that regard.
at some point, you got to get the job done. And, especially with government and a lot of medical and scientific, procurement is no easy process. And so the idea of having to do that as often as many other people might like to, I think can be rough. Um, there's ways around that, but yeah, I'm locking into 3-year things when it comes to technology. If it can be avoided, it probably should be. But at the same time, like I say, I get it. I know how nasty that procurement process can be.
Yeah, I think there was an interesting point brought up about kind of an a la carte um, selection of your software,
Yeah.
because most of these companies have published APIs that, if you have a little bit of, a developer in your back pocket that you can reach out to, we can make them work together better um, than than not working together at all.
That's the way it's been for events and technology for a whole time, though, right? Is like you depending on how much time you have as the planner, you can get better deals. You can patch together 5 different providers, or you can go with someone who's going to handle all of it, right? And so it's kind of the Alton Brown method of looking at your kitchen utensils. He's not a fan of unitaskers. So if it only does one job, it's not necessarily going to be best at anything else. But at the same time, I think there's something to be said that and I've had these conversations on other podcasts. What's better, piecing it together or going with like a juggernaut. Like a Cvent style where they do everything, right? I mean, that's Cvent's whole thing is, hey, we got you start to finish, and they keep and what if they don't have it, they buy it, and that's really easy for the planner. And so as a general rule, then you're going to pay more for that. And maybe each one of those individual services isn't going to be perfect for you because it's like buying it off the shelf versus an artisanal version of something. So it's really is this age-old question, and it hasn't changed as we've moved into this of do you go with a platform that has a built-in networking capability? Do you go with a platform that has a built-in registration capability? All of this, or do I have a registration platform? And then I have the online platform, and then I have a networking function, and then and get those from different providers. And it really is honestly about how much time and money you've got. And frankly, the less time planners have, the more likely they are to just throw money at it and say make it go. Same goes with thinking back to our audiovisual bids, right? The people who use the generally more expensive in-house AV companies are the ones who can't afford the time to get 3 different bids, line them all up and say, well, what about this projector versus that projector, these lights versus that lights? They don't have the time or the knowledge necessarily to be able to do that. So it's, it's that as a result, they just go with the in-house provider and they get 40% off the top, which is, and then that knocks it down to, 100% more than anybody else. So it's just one of those things. And I don't mean to knock the in-house because it's the same thing as the $8 candy bar in the lobby, right? Yeah, you can go out the door and down the street to the 7-Eleven to get the same candy bar, but it's bar time and you just want to go up to your room and, it's going to go on the master bill and nobody will know. So you get the $8 candy bar.
You're paying for the convenience. It's funny, we on
Exactly.
our pre-call we talked about almost nothing but production and audio equipment and lighting, and we haven't even touched on that, and we're almost out of time. So is there any just quick bits of knowledge you want to spew on our audience real quick?
Yeah, and I'm happy to go long if people want to stick around a little bit, but I'm getting the thumbs down on that. They'll get the hook. Okay, all right. Never hurts to ask. Yeah, it's honestly my biggest production tips is to try everything. And so if it's possible to assign someone on your team or bring someone in from your production company to have one-on-one calls with your presenters, to say, okay, where are you planning on being for this event? And also trying to do that at roughly the time that they would be speaking. That's huge too, because you never know what light is going to be coming in from a window, could be splashing on the background, could be splashing on their head. So try and call them at roughly the time that they're going to be presenting, and then just spend some time with them, not just okay, looks good, be okay. Is that where you're planning on being? Can you show me the rest of your room? Okay, so you see those windows that are behind you? Okay, so why don't you just turn your whole body? No, you can't move your laptop. Okay, get a box. Go get a box and then put the laptop. I mean, literally, we need to do that and say, hey, you're going to be in front of 10,000 people in a week, so we want to make sure that you look your best. And that's what I always, it's like the CEOs that don't want to walk the stage. Hey, we just want to make sure you look good. Really stroke. Try and, make sure that, we want to make sure you look your best. No, okay, you know what? Let us ship you a couple of lights. They're $50 on Amazon. We'll drop ship them. Keep them when we're done. We would spend. Think about the money that got spent on things like centerpieces, chair covers, at our events. Take a fraction of what you were going to spend on centerpieces and chair covers and make an AV budget and send each one of your presenters a $40 light kit, just so that you can get a little bit of fill on their things. Take a look at what their cameras are. Okay, do you have any other laptops available? Because I'll be honest with you, I did a side-by-side with my $3,000 MacBook Pro and, my Logitech camera and my iPad and my phone and I also have a Surface laptop and a Surface tablet, actually. The Surface tablet by far had the best picture of all of them. And you wouldn't expect that out of a tablet. And you definitely wouldn't expect how crappy Apple cameras frequently are. It's like, dude, I spent $3,000 on this thing. Puts a halfway decent camera in that, So, that's like really one of the big things that I want to emphasize to folks is try everything. Every headphones that you've got, every set of headphones that you've got, don't just spend just because you spent $300 on a new set of earbuds does not mean they're going to sound good. Grab the cheap pair that came with your kid's phone free and try those, because you really don't know which ones are going to sound good and which one's going to sound bad. And then just have them, like either do that one-on-one with them or just recommend that they hop into a Zoom call by themselves, hit record, try a bunch of mics, try a bunch of cameras, try a bunch of locations in their house and see what looks good. We are well past we're just figuring this out stage at this point, and so many people have been on so many Zoom calls at this point. You have to try and stand out. You have to try and make it look like it's not just another Zoom call where your presenter rolled out of bed, sat down at their desk, and put on their Zoom shirt and are going to be presenting. So we have to up the production values. We have to up the attention values. The boring old death by PowerPoint was terrible in person, and it's 10 times worse online. So the more that we can do these kinds of things, where it's ask me anything, rapid fire, involving the audience as much as possible, engaging with the presenter, the more we can do those kinds of things, panels, interviews, rather than just slide. All of that, I think, comes together. Is that enough production stuff lightning round for you?
That's great.
That was great.
We are definitely getting pretty close to time. Do you want to take the last couple moments to tell us a little something about your class that you're offering?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that'd be great. So the backstory on this is for the better part of 10 years, I've been working with a company called the Event Leadership Institute. I started doing classes for them actually on technical meeting production. So our in-person lights, camera, sound, aimed squarely at planners, or other people in the industry, not people who wanted to get into AV, but people who just wanted to expand their knowledge and be able to understand those AV bids when they come in and be okay with answering questions. When we went into lockdown, we actually started talking pretty early on about, okay, we think this online event thing could be big. Let's put together a course. So we actually put together a 6-week course, the Virtual Event and Meetings Management Certificate course, in conjunction with MPI. So MPI has backed this. It's available. You get CMP credits for taking it. It's a 6-week course on how to put on online events. And at this point, we've put probably 15, just under 1,500 planners and other folks have gotten their certificates, and it's getting really good reviews. So it's been an amazing experience for me because I get to do this with 500 people, 500 planners once a week or so, which is something that I truly enjoy and helping people out. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to chat about that. So ELI, eventleadershipinstitute.com.
Well, thanks, and thank you for joining us. Thank all of the people who joined us from their homes. Big round of applause for Brandt.
Yay!
And I'm going to close it out just telling you what we have going on in 2 weeks. We, on October 15th, we'll be taking a peek behind the virtual curtain of the MPI Texas Hill Country Chapter virtual event. The TEC, the Texas Education Conference, which is completely virtual this year and is happening later today. So if you've got nothing else to do, I think they closed registration, but
like half an hour.
yeah, it's like right now, you can still join in on the fun. We built out the event in Events Air, the on-air platform, and we want to share what we learned with you. So mark your calendars, tell your friends. Don't forget to check out our archives. We hope to see you next time for that TEC behind the curtain look. So, bye everyone.